Hello, everyone, and welcome to 3Wide TV and the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series. Tonight, we're at Atlanta Motor Speedway, the reconfigured Atlanta Motor Speedway. That is for the FatalConcepts.com 301. I'm Peter Short, and alongside me all race long is Andre Grandbush. And Andre, great to have you. We had an off week last week, but we're back on track. All the action returning on 3Wide TV tonight.
Yes, sir, and it is going to be a ton of action. The newly configured Atlanta always provides a lot of close action, as we can see right there. We're already bump drafting in practice alone. We're not even to the race yet, and these guys are pushing each other to their limits, trying to figure out exactly who they're going to link up with, who they're going to work with, and how they're going to run this race. Because it's still a bit of a wild card. You know, we've only gone here a time or two, and still a lot to learn.
Yeah, and look at the current leaderboard right now. Vincent Valvano, fastest of all. Doug Neal slotting into second. Those two drivers around the 30.4 second bracket. But then you got Fred Lester, then Josh Smith, Philip Scott rounding out our top five. So pretty tied up at the top as, the number 9 machine there. Holy smokes, the number 51 up in smoke, up and over, rolling through the grass. My, oh my, that could be something that we see a couple times here tonight, Andre, as this racetrack races like a super speedway.
It does race like a super speedway, but unlike a super speedway, you got a lot tighter turn radiuses and a very narrow track surface. So you've got all the speed, you've got all of the close quarters racing, but not as big of a room for error as you may have at a track like Talladega or even Daytona. And you can see right there, when they come through the tri-oval, that's the widest part of the track. They're definitely going to be able to get 3, 4, maybe even 5 wide right there. But as soon as they get to the corner, it narrows up, and it narrows up quickly. So it's definitely more of a challenge, and tires will play a factor here. It's going to be more or less wide open the entire time, but the truck will get tighter and tighter as the night goes on. So you're going to have to think about where you enter, because while it should be wide open, if you're 20 laps into a run on a set of tires and you enter down on the apron, you will have to lift. And as you can see from our rear view cam looking back towards the number 17, if you lift, Peter, well, bad things might happen.
Yeah, you can fall backwards in a hurry here at this racetrack. Hopefully we see lots of side-by-side action. However, here tonight, just about 2.5 minutes left in this practice session before we go over into the race session. I want to thank you for tuning in here tonight on 3Wide TV for round number 3. We've had 2 spectacular rounds so far this season in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series. Of course, we started off the season back at Daytona, Andre, in one of the most thrilling races that I have seen in this series, and that's, quite a big statement. We've seen a lot of really good races over the past couple of seasons, and then we went to Las Vegas 2 weeks ago, and we probably got as good of a race as we've ever seen there as well. Of course, it was Jason Freeman taking home the win with a big strategy call at Vegas. Tristan Maher won the season opener at Daytona a couple weeks ago, but Jason Freeman with that tire strategy call when he saved a set of tires. Might we see a similar strategy play out here tonight?
We definitely could. Again, tires are going to matter, I would say, a little bit more than your average super speedway race. So strategy may not be a complete waste at a track like this. Generally, you go to a super speedway and you don't really think about strategy outside of who you're pitting with and how big of a group you can pit with. But again, this track's just different. It's not quite the same as those other super speedways. So we could see tire strategy. We could see all kinds of things play out. And as you can see just on the timing and scoring, everybody's so close together. And the draft matters so much. I mean, these guys at the top of the board, Valvano, Neal, Lester, these are guys that were working with each other, able to bump draft, able to really just kind of tandem around the circuit. That's how you're going to get the fastest lap times possible. But as you can see right there, these guys coming down pit road, I do want to mention, it's going to be tough to pass here. There's really not as much space to jump down or jump up out of line and make that pass work. I definitely think the bottom lane is going to be dominant. I don't think you're going to be able to build up much of a run on the high line. So it's going to be tough to pass, which is another way that this is unique from your average plate race. So I don't know. These guys have a lot to deal with tonight, and I think it's going to be a third good race out of 3 races. I mean, like you mentioned, Peter, so far, the season is not disappointing. We've had two of the most crazy races, I think, in the league history, just in the first two races alone. And then you come here, and I think we're definitely expecting something similar. But the checkered flag does fly over the track for practice, and that means these guys are going to get into qualifying, Peter. So do you think they're going to maybe follow the same Daytona strategy where your first outlap is going to be as close to the wall as possible, then you kind of migrate down towards the apron on the second?
Yeah, I think so. I expect to see that here in qualifying. Of course, we'll see whether or not that's true as these drivers will start to roll out onto the racetrack here momentarily. Josh Smith, the first one to do so. There he is rolling out onto the racetrack right now in the number 13 Toyota. So we'll keep our eyes on Josh Smith. Keep your eyes on the left-hand side of the screen as the qualifying lap times do start to roll in as well. Here in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast, I want to give a big shout out to FatalConcepts.com. If you're in the market for an iRacing paint scheme, go check out FatalConcepts.com here tonight. Of course, Schue's Lawn Care Service as well, the presenting sponsor of the FatalConcepts.com 301. So want to get the sponsor plugs in early here while we get the green flag for qualifying. The number 13, Josh Smith, coming to the start-finish line right now. He'll start that timed lap. He didn't go up to the top side of the racetrack like I was expecting him to. He's going to stick right down there on that double white line. And, of course, there was a lot of questions by the league administrators this week and the drivers asking about double yellow line and clarifying the rules on the double white line, rather. And the rule is you're not allowed to go down there. You're not allowed to go below the double white line in qualifying, and that holds true here on the quad oval as well. You see Josh Smith there not cutting there on the front stretch. His lap time, 32.52. Some other lap times starting to roll in. Look at that. Looks like Steven Lashinsky in the number 9. He jumps to the top of the board. But then you got a big disparity on lap number 1, Andre. We got the Tesoro brothers, 33.04, 33.15, almost a half second over a half second off. I would have to think that the Tesoro brothers did run that high line on the first lap to lose that full half second. We'll see what they do as they come around to complete lap number 2 here, coming to the line. And the number 69 of Dominic Tesoro, where does he jump up on the board? Doesn't look like any significant improvement. So the Tesoro brothers might be starting at the back here tonight.
Yeah, I really thought you were right. Maybe they were just running the high line for their first qualifying lap, but it could be they either intentionally want to start, towards the back, or it could just be that the 69 maybe got an incident point on his second lap, which would disqualify that lap. Now, it is possible to actually, I should note, you can scrape the wall coming out of turn 4 on your first lap, but because you're coming out of turn 4 and that can theoretically impact the next lap, it will disqualify lap 2, even though the incident occurred on lap 1. That could have definitely happened. If you're trying to ride the high line, build up momentum, and you just barely scrape that wall coming to the tri-oval, well, your second lap is a wash. So something these guys have to keep in mind, and maybe one of the reasons that we're not seeing too many drivers run that strategy. But it is still Lashinsky at the top of the board with his 32.51, just a hair ahead of Smith in his 13 machine with a 32.52. And then you got another hundredth of a second to Scott, 32.53. We just saw him pull off the track. And man, oh man, just everybody so close together in qualifying. The first significant gap, and by significant, I mean literally 600ths of a second, which is practically nothing, goes back to Bilson in the 00. He's in 5th with a 32.60. Tristan Maher with a 32.65. Tristan, I think, is going to be one to watch out for, I think, in these next few races, Peter, because he's had some really bad luck over the last couple weeks. But, we know he's a talented driver. We know he's capable of winning. You got to think with the bad luck he's had over the last few weeks, he's got to be driving a little bit more motivated. But with that said, here comes the number 8. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, but Crump has been one of the best qualifiers of the season. And there it is, 32.38 on the pole.
Yeah, we said back at Las Vegas, he had some Ryan Newman vibes about him, and that's why we've dubbed him the Rocket Man, and I think the question mark has been answered. 2 poles so far this season, trying to make it 3 for 3 on the provisional pole, just 34 seconds away from making it 3 for 3 in 23 for the number 8 machine. Man, that wouldn't have been great if his number was like 33 or something like that. Doesn't quite work out. But hey, a 32.38 for the number 8 machine. Numbers kind of doubling up there again for Scott Crump as he comes down into his pit stall. I'm just looking up and down, and the racetrack falls silent all of a sudden. So not a lot of qualifiers here, Andre. About half the field taking time, and half the field decided to start at the back tonight.
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily surprise me. I think at a super speedway race like this, you got a lot of guys who know that it doesn't take much to really race your way through the field. Everybody's going to be really close and condensed anyhow, so they may feel safer towards the back, and give themselves an opportunity to kind of be out of the fray. But here is our official starting lineup for the night. Scott Crump, the Rocket Man, on his third consecutive pole in that number 8, right alongside Steven Lashinsky in the number 9 machine. Row 2 is going to be Josh Smith in that 13, and Philip Scott in his 99 World Ninja League machine. 5 and 6 going to Matt Cherry and Paul Bilson. 7 and 10, Tristan Maher. Jimbo Casterline with a good qualifying effort inside of the top 10 there, P8. And rounding out our top 10 is going to be Jason Freeman and Dominic Tesoro.
Yeah, keep your eyes on 9th, 10th, and 11th here tonight as Julian Tesoro will be rolling off from the inside of row number 6 in 11th. Adam Newton, the first driver not to take time, he'll be rolling off from the outside of row 6 in 12th. A little bit further back, Fred Lester in 13th. Bill Edwards will be rolling off from 14th. Nate Maurer, our reigning series champion, 15th. Jeff Price, 16th. David Buell, Simbox Motorsports teammates, actually making up row number 9 with Buell starting 17th, and Justin White, who really needs a good showing here tonight at the Atlanta Motor Speedway, he'll be 18th. Behind him, their other Simbox Motorsports teammate, man, it's Simbox rounding out the back half of the top 20 with Doug Neal, their 19th, and Michael McCauley rounding out our top 20. I do believe this is a home race for Doug Neal, so keep your eyes on the hometown driver there, rolling off from the inside of row number 10 there, Andre.
And just outside the top 20, we've got Jason Schue and his number 3 machine right alongside Vinny Valvano. Now, Valvano was fastest in practice, did not want to post qualifying time, so keep an eye on him. Garrett Gleason and John Flamian are going to round out the field in 23 and 24th, respectively. So it is quite a sizable field. A lot of drivers who felt confident enough not to post a qualifying time, but some of those guys in the back, we know from practice, have a lot of speed. So I think we're going to see quite a bit of passing, quite a bit of action in these first few laps here, Peter.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of action, that is for sure. Very much looking forward to what we have in store here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway as the iRacing pace truck works its way through turn number 3 and 4. Field about to go green. We do have one stage caution here in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series. That will fall at the completion of lap number 20 here tonight. Let's wait for that flagman to wave the green flag here for the FatalConcepts.com. 301 field coming down to the green flag. There it is. We're racing here at Atlanta Motor Speedway.
And it's going to be 2 by 2. The question is, how fast do these guys get sorted out? If at all, the 99 is going to move up to the high line here. He's got some draft help behind him. And our pole sitter is going to slot down right in front of the number 9. And the number 9 kind of abandoning that high line post. We've already got a few drivers in the back going down beneath the apron. I would assume those drivers are just trying to fall to the back of the field intentionally. You see that quite a bit at these types of races. Now Philip Scott falling back in the corner, but I'm curious to see if he can maybe get a bit of a run out of the corner, and he does. The high line staging a huge charge towards the lead. I didn't think the top was going to provide very big runs here, Peter, but obviously it has. I believe that's the number 13 dipping down beneath the apron, so not sure if that was intentional or maybe just got a little bit squirrely.
Well, maybe he saw that the action's a little bit hotter, a little bit spicier than he would have hoped in the opening laps, as still Philip Scott trying to use that high line to his advantage. I think Paul Bilson was tucked up behind that number 99 last time they went across the start-finish line, but Bilson's going to drop to the inside behind Steven Lashinsky. That double zero of Paul Bilson, he definitely is one of those drivers back to the series this year with the loss of the iRacing cap. He's one to keep an eye on as this season goes on for. Also, fairly aggressive driver, and probably no more aggressive than the driver that's right behind him, though, the number 51 on the inside line. That is, of course, the number 51 of Matt Cherry. He's going to jump to the high side now. Talk about aggression. Almost contact there with Bilson through the latter half of the quad oval. But Matt Cherry doesn't have any help up there, Andre.
Yeah, not a whole lot of help up top at all. It seems like everybody's kind of favoring that bottom, which I kind of predicted. You know, the bottom's a little bit easier to run, and I think the high line forming a run, I mean, you can do it. Philip Scott proved it, but not an easy thing to do. But you do just have those few drivers up there trying to take the lead for themselves, trying to make something happen. Now, we do have stages this year, obviously, and there are stage points to be awarded, and I do believe stage 1's going to come at lap 20, if I recall correctly. So not very far into the race, and it's not going to take long to get there. These guys know that, so they want to get as far up into the top 10 as they can, and I think that's the reason for all this chaotic racing early on.
Yeah, you just saw we kind of lost the feed there for a brief moment while we were trying to highlight driver of the number 14, Jeff Price, who appears to be having connection issues. I saw his name tumbling down the scoring pylon. In fact, he may have dropped out of the session completely, as you see him on the left-hand side of your screen being scored one lap down in the number 14. Good news is he can hopefully get the Brookstone Animal Hospital Lucky Dog Award here when we get that stage caution, but it could be an early night for the number 14 if he does not get back on the racetrack, as the field pretty much now single file, Andre. Not seeing a whole lot of drivers jumping out. There you see them all racing on by. You see the 69 of Dominic Tesoro peeking out. Also, a little bit further back, we saw the number 971 of Nate Maurer trying to duck to the high side. He's going to drop back down low. Bill Edwards in his number 5 machine. Of course, Mr. FatalConcepts.com himself. Silent Syndicate Racing Toyota Tundra right there. He's just outside the top 10 in the 11th position, running behind Las Vegas winner Jason Freeman, as Josh Smith now looking to the inside of Vincent Valvano. I think that's a new look this week on the number 64 of Valvano, running that high line. So good to see Vinny running some new paint, but in front of them, pretty much all single files. Not back here, almost 3 wide for a brief moment. I think Freeman actually might have been in the middle and backed out of it. That's a wise move at this stage of the game, Andre.
Oh yeah, especially with how narrow these corners are. I would not want to be going into that corner 3 wide at all, so I can definitely understand why the 20 might have thought a little bit better of that. There's a lot of racing left. We're on lap 9. We've got 125 laps total. You can give up a little bit now to get it back later, that's for sure. But if you wreck your car, if you wind up in the catch fence like we saw in practice, well, you're not getting anything later. You're just getting a ride back to the garage. So up front, not a whole lot has changed. Scott Crump, our pole sitter, still in the lead, but man, oh man, it looks like Lashinsky is just looking every which way to see if the door is open anywhere on the track to try to make that move. And I think if Bilson were to step out and Lashinsky were to step out, they could probably make it happen. The problem is trust. You see this big single file line on the bottom. If somebody jumps out to the high line to make a move and nobody goes with them, they're going straight to the back. They're going to lose a ton of position because it is just a wall of cars on the bottom drafting together. And there he goes. There goes Bilson on the high side. Now, if nobody goes with him, we might see exactly what I just talked about. Yeah, he's gonna abandon that move. He's gonna duck back in line while he still can. And again, it just goes down to trust, Peter. These guys have to know who's gonna go with them. And right now, early on in this event, I think it's a big question mark.
Yeah, definitely is a big question mark. A little bit further back, Philip Scott, who probably is the driver who's been the most steadfast to that high line in the number 99 World Ninja League machine. He, well, has dropped back. Andre, kind of like you said, being freight trained by the inside line so far, he has now officially dropped out of the top 10. I was about to say he had almost dropped out of the top 10, but I look at my scoring numbers and he's down to 12th now. So he has dropped 8 positions and is the driver who has lost the most spots from the drop the green flag, equal with Jeff Price. Jeff Price not returning to the racetrack, unfortunately, so looks like an early night for him in that machine. Tristan Maher using that high line. He started in 7th, now running in 8th. right behind the number 13 of Josh Smith. He's been slowly picking up spots on the inside. And Jeff Price in the chat saying, looks like he cannot race for a while. Can't afford to get a new CPU and motherboard. Jeff, what's the problem that you're having? Is it overheating or something else going on with your machine? Sometimes just erasing Windows and starting with a fresh new Windows install does the trick if you're having some type of issue that might be fixable by that. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's overheating. But yeah, let us know what is happening with your sim rig in the chat. Just joining us, and if you're in the chat as well, console Jeff Price a little bit, but also stop by, say hi. We really do appreciate those comments each and every week here on the channel. But up front, it is still Scott Crump and Andre so far leading every one of the 14 laps that are in the book so far. But 6 laps until the stage break, and Bilson has got around Steven Lashinsky, so move the 00 up into second. We mentioned that Bilson is a little bit more aggressive than I'd say most, and definitely going to be one that will want to win this stage in just about 5 laps from now.
Yeah, you're definitely going to see him start fanning out relatively soon and starting to make moves, and Bilson will be among the first to do so. We've already seen him a few times try to get something going on the high line, and nobody really went with him, but he didn't lose a whole lot for trying. All he really did was make a statement. He showed everybody behind him, hey, I'm trying to make this move. I'm going to try to make something happen. So now they know if he goes out and he gets to the high line, they can go with him and be pretty confident in that. But right now, he's just right on the bumper, maybe even trying to get that 8 a little bit unsettled, which is really easy to do in the corners here, as again, it is a tighter radius than you would expect at a super speedway. But coming through the quad oval, they're still going to be linked up bumper to bumper. Bilson just waiting for the opportunity. And I think if they're going to do it, they're going to have to back away from Crump just a little bit, let him build up a little bit of a lead, and then get that run with the draft. But who knows? Maybe they can make the move from right behind. We have seen a couple passes in that vein so far tonight. Bilson just barely peeking up high, peeking down low, trying to see what's going on. Will Lashinsky go with them? Well, we're not sure, but a little bit further back, look at this. We got some 2-wide racing, as it looks like Jimbo Casterline's going to go side by side with, is that Smith in the 13? Yes, it is Smith. So they're going to kind of sort out that position. Still 2x2, getting a little bit hairy back there, Peter.
Yeah, and Josh Smith has been really patient. He's slowly picking up those positions that he gave up a little while ago. Not sure why he gave up all those positions, because he dropped well back, and he's been slowly picking them up and laying them down back up to 6th. I think he fell outside of the top 10, back around 12th to 13th position. He's now knocking on the door of the number 69, Julian Tesoro, as we have 2 laps. And you're seeing something going on, probably back here around Matt Cherry, Andre.
Yeah, that 17 tried to get a move on Matt Cherry. He went up to the high line. Cherry threw a really late block. I think made a little bit of contact. They were able to sort it out. Nobody got moved out of line or anything like that. But coming to lap 20, they're going to go side by side for a second. That's exactly what Crump wants. This is going to make it easier for him to drive to this stage win without anybody able to really mount a move here. Lashinsky shuffled out of line, but look at this. Bilson going to jump up in front of him. Can the high line make the move? They are side by side. A little bit of a blink out of Bilson, and oh! The number 13 of Smith, because of the blinking, I think, got a little bit unsettled, but as they come to the line, a little bit of door slamming for second place, but it is Crump that is going to lead every lap of this stage and win it. The 17 comes down pit road prematurely. Again, that was all kicked off, I believe, by the 13, and I think that was a bit of a response to the blinking up front. We'll have to take a look at the 3-wide TV replay, see exactly what happened behind our leaders as they were trying to sort out who's going to win the stage. These guys are trying to sort out who's going to stay on the track. So keep your eye on that number 13 of Smith. He's got the 51 of Cherry right behind him as they go into the corner. The 18 of Jimbo Casterline beneath them. Now Jimbo's going to swerve up just a little bit. Now there's a bit of a blink there, but I think we can infer that some contact was made from the 18 up into the 13, and behind them they're going 3 and even momentarily 4 wide, trying to respond to that contact. And the 17 unable to gather it back up. I believe he was able to spare himself too much damage, but nonetheless coming down pit road prematurely, and that's what you get at these plate races.
Yeah, let's see if we can get a little bit better look of it this time. You see the 18 washes up, makes the contact, and they just kind of bounce off one another. Great save there out of the number 17, Tristan Maher. Number 13 also getting a decent amount of contact with the outside wall. Hopefully those trucks can get fixed up and can get back out there on the racetrack here shortly without any significant damage. As you can see, leaders did come down pit road. And interestingly, Andre, I think Scott Crump may have learned something from last week because he did not take tires. I'm looking up and down the scoring pylon, and I think the top three of Crump, Bilson, and Valvano all just took fuel only, and then everyone on back behind him, they came down and took a set.
Yeah, that's a viable strategy for sure. Again, tires do matter here. They're going to affect how easy it is to really get around these corners wide open, and it kind of opens up your line choice, I would say, a little bit to have fresh tires. But as long as you get a good line, and as long as your car is stable, even on old tires, you should be able to just flat foot this thing. So not taking tires shouldn't be too big of a detriment. The only thing he's going to have to worry about, of course, is wheel spin on the restart. It's going to be a little bit tougher for him to get up through the gears without throwing up a bit of a smoke show in front of these guys. So he'll have to keep that in mind. But once that's done and over with, once he gets up to speed, he should be all right. And he's going to have an extra set behind the wall later should we need it. And I think these drivers are probably thinking back to Daytona, Peter. Daytona was so calm for so long. I mean, just a masterclass in racecraft, I would say. And then in the last few laps, things got really crazy really fast. And I think these guys are probably expecting something similar here.
Well, we still have over 100 laps to sort out the victor here tonight at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Jeff Price did get back with us in the chat, and yeah, definitely reinstalling Windows it's worked for me. Doesn't always work. Sometimes works though. For when you have computer gremlins, or sometimes even just doing a Windows restore if you have restore points can be a big benefit. But also redoing the thermal face, which all you have to do is you have to open up the case of your PC, pull off the cooler. Now, if you have a water cooler, you also might be running low on refrigerant. It does slowly disappear. But if you have just a fan that cools your CPU, take off the fan, clean it up with a bunch of rubbing alcohol, apply new paste, reseat the fan, install it. There's tons of YouTube videos on how to do it, and hopefully that sorts things out. Meanwhile, green flag is back in the air here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway, and a little bit of wheel spin there, Andre, I think out of the 00 of Paul Bilson, but we're all rolling clean and green towards turn number 1.
And we knew that wheel spin was going to be a possibility on those older tires, but oh man, a little bit of contact further back. They're able to get it gathered up, I believe. No harm, no foul there. That may have been Bilson. Yes, Bilson in the 00 down on the apron, a little bit off pace. He's going to have to try and merge onto the track. Let's take a look and see exactly what happened. Bilson had spun his tires on the restart, but he did get going, so I'm not sure what caused this. He's got Tesoro in the number 69 right behind him.
Oh, did he money shift that 00? I think he might have money shifted.
That's what it looks like to me. Yeah, I think you're right.
So just like that, the 00 machine is on pit road, and day done. The money shift is, well, he tried to shift up into 4th, but it didn't go into 4th gear. Went into 2nd gear, and that's it. 00, blown engine. We stay green flag, was able to get off the racetrack before all that oil was dumped down on the track, and things have cycled up at the front of the field because Andre, when the 00's engine blew up, that kind of broke up the field. Scott Crump got so far out in front of the pack that the draft pulled him up closer to him and just blew on by him. So Scott Crump dropping to 3rd. The Tesoro brothers, how about that? Dominic Tesoro leads Julian Tesoro up at the front of the field. Nate Maurer, a reigning series champion, now starting to move up the field into the top 5 for the first time. Steven Lashinsky, who's been in the top 3 or so all night long, he's down in 5th. Jimbo Casterline in 6th. David Buell, Bill Edwards, Jason Freeman, and Adam Newton currently rounding out our top 10.
Yeah, that 4th place car, Nate Maurer, that's another driver who's had some pretty bad luck so far this year. Definitely has not been getting the results that we have come to expect out of that 971, and oftentimes it's just due to circumstances beyond his control. So he's looking to have his season turned around sooner rather than later. There's a couple drivers like that throughout the field, and right now he's in pretty good position to maybe get things turned around as he's inside the top 5. And it didn't take long for the Tesoro brothers to get up front. Again, they started just at the tail end of the top 10, I believe 10th and 11th actually, for both of them, and now leading the way. And, you know, we talked a little bit about trust earlier, knowing who's going to go with you, who can you work with. Well, you know, I think these guys can trust each other. You know, being brothers, being teammates, they know that they're going to work with each other. They're in full communication, and that's an advantage that I think a lot of these guys behind them don't have, and it's an advantage that means a lot at a plate track like this. Now, we do have the jack stand going up on the number 51 of Matt Cherry. I'm not entirely certain why he's down on pit road. I don't know if he was there the whole time getting damage fixed. Is that the case, Peter?
You know, I don't know. I think we might have to do a little bit of 3-wide TV sleuthing. He might have been one of those drivers involved partially in that last accident. I just wonder if maybe, just maybe, his damage is a little bit too much for him to kind of keep going. I don't see anything that's kind of standing out just beyond the fact that he was what appears to be a little bit off the pace. Same thing with the number 13 machine now, who has also joined Matt Cherry on pit road. So Josh Smith, Matt Cherry getting significant work done to both of those Stay Tuned Sports podcast trucks in their pit boxes. So we'll see whether or not they're able to work their way back onto the track in just a little bit. But you know, Andre, we talk about being off the pace at Daytona and Talladega, how sketchy it can be, you know, when you're down 10, 20, 30 miles an hour with a whole bunch of damage. Well, at this racetrack, it's even sketchier. It's narrower. We talk about how Talladega is so much wider than Daytona. But now we get to talk about how Daytona is so much wider than Atlanta because it is. This racetrack is so narrow there in the corners. It's pretty sketchy to go 2 wide. It's extremely sketchy to go 3 wide. You can do it, but you don't see it very often. You don't see it pulled off well very often, even less so than you see people do it. So that might be another reason why those lap trucks are on pit road getting some of their damage fixed. Unfortunately, I think Matt Cherry has now pulled his truck off of the pit road. His night might be done. We'll wait to see if Josh Smith also does the same thing. As you see the 971 there of Nate Maurer just clipping the apron on entry into the corner. And Andre, you know, for everyone at home going, oh, man, why did that truck hit the apron? Well, sometimes it's just impossible to see because you're viewing these cars when you're tucked up so close to a truck in front of you is very, very minimal.
Yeah, you really can't see a whole lot. It's bad enough in the Cup Series cars and in the Xfinity cars, but I think in the trucks, it's even worse. You just got this giant tailgate in front of you, and the spoilers are pretty tall on these trucks. And you can see from this gyro cam just how little they can see, except for the fact that the gyro cam's kind of off to the side, so you kind of have a good angle next to the car in front of you. And the driver doesn't have that, right? The driver's on the left side of the car. They are getting a face full of bumper, and they're just kind of using that as reference. When the car in front of you starts turning, you start turning. And that's basically all you can really do. And you are just putting your full faith in everybody around you. If that car in front of you has to slow down for any reason, if he makes any abrupt movements, it's going to be a chain reaction all the way through the field. And there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, look at this. They are literally locked up at the bumper. There's no human on Earth that could react to something in time. So it's just a big game of trust. And again, going back to these two being brothers and working together, they do have trust in one another. And again, that's a huge advantage over the rest of the field. But a little bit further back, we're starting to go 2 wide. Jimbo Casterline on the bottom. The number 5 machine working with Philip Scott in the 99. Philip has been pretty dedicated to that high line, Peter. It hasn't worked out yet, but I always talk about it. I think he's putting some goodwill in the bank with a lot of these guys. They see the 99 doing what he's been doing all night long, and they know that when it comes down to it, if they ever need to jump out and make a move and they need somebody to go with them, they can have a lot of faith that that 99 will be the truck to go with, because he's been up there all night long.
Yeah, that number 99 of Philip Scott, he likes it high, wide, and handsome, for sure. As up towards the front, we're starting to see a little bit high, wide, and handsome as well. Scott Crump has worked his way underneath Julian Tesoro, trying to break up the Tesoro brothers. And the 971 and Nate Maurer now coming to the back bumper of his Toyota Tundra as well. That's all good news for Scott Crump as he draws level side by side for the race lead here on lap number 37. So Scott Crump, who opened the race with 20 laps led. Ooh, I think that was Philip Scott there throwing some smoke off the right side of his Ford F-150 back there. And, Andre, he kind of mentioned that you kind of turn when the car in front of you turns or the truck in front of you turns. Just think of a game of telephone where, one person says something and gives it to someone else, it whispers it to someone else, and you go down the line, and after about 4 or 5 people, it's something completely different. Well, that happens here at 175 miles an hour with the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series here in the National Sim Racing Association. It is still Dominic Tesoro leading, but that inside line mounting a heavy charge. And Andre, one thing about the Tesoro brothers using that high line is that's actually pulled Bill Edwards and the number 99 of Philip Scott now up into the mix for the race lead as we are 2 by 2, about 4 cars deep.
Yeah, we don't even have a stage coming up. We're done with the stages for the night. This isn't really for points necessarily, as we have to get to the end for any points to be dealt out. These guys just want to be out front. They want to feel safe and secure, and I think, being at the lead of the pack or being at the very tail end are really the only 2 safe and secure feeling positions in the entire field. So the Tesoro brothers trying desperately not to give this lead up, but I'll tell you what, Nate Maurer and Scott Crump, they are getting hellacious runs down on the bottom through the corner. They have such good rotation speed, and of course on this straightaway, that's where the high line's prevailing. But I think sooner or later the 8 is going to get clear. The question is, once he gets clear, what does he do? Does he jump up in front of the Tesoro brothers, try to use their momentum? Does he stick down on the low line with Nate Maurer? It's always the game you got to play whenever you're leading one of these super speedway races. You got to really choose your lanes wisely. Keep an eye on all of your opponents, see where they're going, where the momentum lies, and race accordingly. But so far, that's not a problem he's really got to think about quite yet, because those Tesoro brothers are tenacious up there. They have not given up. They've had some cars drop out of line. They don't have as much draft help as they had a few laps ago. Philip Scott dipped out of line. The number 18, Jimbo Castelline, he dipped out of line. They're down to 3 trucks up there, and they're still clinging to it. They are still making moves for the lead here. They don't need the draft. They don't need help. They're going to do what they can by themselves. If you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. And that's what they're trying to do here, Peter.
Yeah, that outside line definitely holding strong with the Tesoro brothers. And like you said, that trust that they have between them will allow them to stay a little bit closer, packed up with one another. As Steven Lashinsky might have thought about diving to the high line, but he's going to stay with Nate Maurer for now, as Maurer might have had a peek to the inside of Scott Crump as well. We know Nate Maurer is a driver who is a little bit aggressive at times, and you mentioned it earlier, Andre, a very disappointing start to the 2023 Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series season for Nate Maurer, although you go back and you look at last season, and Maurer really didn't hit his stride till about 3/4 of the way through the season. Just was very quiet through the regular season. All of a sudden, with about 6 races to go, got hot and really hot. Won, I think, 4 out of the final 5 races that season on his way to the championship, as you see the field working their way past the number 13 of Josh Smith, who did make it back out onto the racetrack. Bad news is his Toyota Tundra is still very much worse for wear. 971 a Maurer looking underneath. I thought there might be 3 wide there for a brief moment, but luckily Scott Crump able to shut the door on him, at least luckily for Scott Crump, and probably luckily for the field. Everyone probably would have ended up wadded up, but we have seen these NSRA Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series drivers be stellar Andre. Lots of green flag action. Not a lot of accidents amongst them. But one thing that I am seeing that's a little bit interesting is, look at this. The top 8 drivers have broke away. The 9th place driver, currently Justin White, is about a full second or so behind Jimbo Casterline. I just wonder if they're seeing all this craziness going on. They saw there might have been a little bit of 3 wide a moment ago. And they said, you know what? We still got 80 laps to go. This is crazy. They're racing like it's the last lap. Oh, look at this. Oh. Dominic Tesoro got out of the groove, and that outside line breaks up, and we're 3 wide, almost 4 wide through the quad oval. David Buell going down below the double white lines. We'll see how the admins call that, because things got sketchy in a hurry, and just like that, Scott Crump comes out the victor of that side-by-side tussle.
And it was a good fight by the Tesoro brothers up top, but eventually I think push had to come to shove, and they just got a little bit out of line. There's some contact between Jimbo Casterline and the number 5 of Edwards. They're able to get it sorted out as Jimbo's a little loose in the tri-oval. It happens. You just got to hold on to her there, bud. Just keep her going. You're all right. But, you know, like I said, push had to come to shove, and going 3 wide like that, I think somebody had to lift. And, you know, if you're the car on the bottom, if you're right on that painted white line, you got all those trucks behind you, you can't lift. You know, if you're Crump, Maurer, you're not lifting in that situation. So it was really just down to Tesoro and all those guys on the high line. They kind of had to concede once things started getting a little bit hectic. But they're not that far back. You know, the Tesoro brothers only fell back to 5th and 6th. You got Buell there in 4th, Edwards, Casterline. These guys are all still with the lead pack. Everybody's right within striking distance of one another. So give them a few laps. They can definitely build up a pretty solid run and get back up there. I mean, we saw the Tesoro brothers go from 10th and 11th all the way up to the lead just in a little over 20 laps. So passing more than possible here at this track. To go on board with 2nd place Nate Maurer. You can see every single lap, Peter. He's looking low. I've noticed you mentioned it earlier, but he's doing it just about every single lap. He's looking down low. And when they were side by side, I think it was actually a bit of a hindrance to that inside line, because they would get out of form every time he did that, and it would stall out a little bit of that drafting momentum. Now, instead of looking low, he's going to look high, and he is able to get to the quarter panel, maybe do a little bit of side drafting, drag him back. Buell's going to jump out and go with them. Question is, can they complete the move? The number 5, as well as the number 2 of Justin White, those 2 drivers are on the high line. They're going to use this draft. They're going to be able to pull up to him probably within a lap or 2. Then we're going to have 4 cars making a run at it. So it is possible for the 971 to make something happen. But every time they get to these corners, of course, the bottom is just the fastest way around the track. We see that every time. And it is so formed up right now. Crump, Leshinsky, the Tesoro brothers, they are just carrying a ton of momentum. And there you have it, the number 5 of Edwards and the number 2, Justin White. They've caught this lead pack up front. Getting a little bit squirrely there. I don't know, Peter, we're on lap 52. I think these guys are reading the lap counter wrong, because this thing's not even close to over.
I'm trying to remember how many laps between pit stops we saw last week at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. I want to say it was around 40 or so laps, which means we're getting pretty close to green flag pit stops, which is definitely going to be interesting. I think it was somewhere around 35 to 40 laps, and these drivers were last on pit road on lap number 21 here tonight under the one and only caution flag that we have had. And, of course, that came kind of concurrently with our stage caution. I think the caution actually was thrown by an admin maybe a little bit before the completion of lap number 20. But nonetheless, there was a little bit of argy-bargy right there coming to the end of stage number 1. But for right now, these drivers will have to start thinking about that entry onto pit road. And, Andre, we saw in practice, a couple of drivers practice it. I think we saw Tristan Maher practice it. Maybe Jason Schue, we saw practice it. Just a couple. It looked pretty tricky to get onto this pit road. It did not look easy. And of course, not only do you have to make it onto pit road with the commitment cone there, but you also have to get down to pit road speed. Both of those things without losing control of your truck, but trying to do so as quick as you can when you're in a giant pack. That's another thing to think about here, Andre. You know, Daytona, Talladega, you got a pretty nice bleed-off space. Here at Atlanta, there's not a bleed-off space. The entry to pit road at a turn number 4 is very abrupt. I mean, you can kind of see it right there. You're going to have to turn down onto the pit road in an absolute hurry. It's going to be important that these drivers call out that they're coming down pit road, that they start to communicate, coordinate with one another, so no one gets run over and big wrecks don't happen.
Yeah, so the pit entrance here, you know, you're already navigating the circumference of the turn and the rotation of that, and then you have to start turning even sharper. It's like a turn within a turn to get down to pit road, because right here you're already turning pretty sharp left, then you got to turn again right here. So it's kind of a multi-apex turn, and it's coming off the banking. There's no way to get pit road without avoiding driving from the banking to the flat. And you know as well as I do, you switch from the banking to the flat, you got to do it perfectly. You got to do it quickly, because if you have 2 tires on the banking and 2 tires on the flat, you are going to spin out. So you got to make a quick little boop maneuver right down to the apron. Make sure you get all 4 tires down there. Otherwise, you're going to be going for a ride. It is not an easy pit road to get down. And like you said, Peter, you add in the fact that you can't really get away with pitting by yourself. You know, if it was just one truck coming down pit road and making the maneuver to get to their pit stall, that'd be one thing. It'd be tough, but it would be doable. Then you got the fact that you got to have 10, 15 cars coming down pit road all at the same time. It is not fun as a driver, but I suspect it will be highly fun for us as spectators. But here's the number 5 of Edwards in pit road. Now, I'm not entirely certain why he came down on his own, but I think that's going to be a bit of a detriment here. He's not going to have a draft partner when he does come out of the pits. And again, this is another difference from Talladega to Daytona. Talladega, you can pit and likely not go a lap down. It is like 49, 50-second lap times. You can get down pit road, get your car serviced, get back out, blend in with traffic just barely a lap down, or maybe not even a lap down at all. Maybe you're in front of them. Lap times are short here. You know, we're down into the 30-second range. You come down pit road, you are going more than a lap down. It is something that you have to keep in mind, because if you come down pit road, go a lap down, caution comes out, suddenly you're trapped, and your race just got a whole lot more difficult.
Yeah, the good news for Bill Edwards is if a caution flag was to come out, he is the only truck 1 lap down. In fact, most of the field, with the exception of John Flamion, who did lose the draft, is pretty much in this pack, which is led by Scott Crump all the way back to Philip Scott and Garrett Gleason. In fact, a couple of those drivers coming down onto pit road right now, led by Jason Schue. There's Vincent Valvano, and I believe that is Garrett Gleason, who is looking to, I think, finish his first race of the season so far this year in the number 7 Zorse Power Racing machine. So those 3 drivers electing to come in maybe a lap or 2 earlier than everyone else. Maybe they had a little bit of free track, a little bit of space where they could, you know, make a safe entry to pit road. Maybe they felt that was best. But right now, that's one driver, John Flamion, I think in the number 38 it is, who had lost the draft. And yeah, that's luckily for the field, just a single truck incident, but that just shows some of the trouble we kind of expect to see these drivers get into getting onto pit road.
Yeah, again, it's one of the most difficult pit road entries I think these guys are going to face all year long. There's really only 2 tracks I can think of that even compare in terms of difficulty, and it's gonna, you know, you're gonna have incidents, you're gonna have accidents. And I know that's something some drivers tend to overlook when they're practicing for a race, as we see Jimbo Casterline coming down pit road. You know, a lot of drivers, they'll turn lap after lap, and they'll make sure they got their line perfected and that they understand how to race this track as well as they possibly can. They don't think about practicing coming down pit road, so it's always important as a driver, make a few mock pit stops, see what it's like getting off the track down to the apron, and make sure that you got it down pat. You can see right there, that's a good idea right there. A few of these drivers cutting down to the apron a little bit early is, oh no, the number 9 Leshinsky noses and tails into the wall. I don't even know how you do that, but that's going to be damage on both ends and likely an unsafe pit road entry. This may be a penalty. stacking on to the time he's already lost.
Yeah, we'll go back and get another look at this one on the 3-wide TV replay. Steven Leshinsky, look at Jason Freeman. He was able to go another lap there on the top side. Leshinsky just, oh man, almost got ran over there by the 17 of Maher. And I wonder if, Andre, if that kind of scared Leshinsky. He locked up the rear brakes just a little bit, and that spun him right around into the inside wall. Did a pretty good job of doing the 360 and getting back rolling. In fact, he's back out there on the racetrack right now as Tristan Maher, Jason Freeman, Adam Newton currently on pit road. But looks like we're going to cycle through here. Just 2 drivers left, Fred Lester and Philip Scott out there on the racetrack. There's Fred in the number 48. He's going to go another lap. Interesting. Philip Scott, however, he's on pit road. So just 1 truck left for us to cycle on through this round of green flag pit stops. And Andre, I have to be honest with you, I didn't expect to see green flag pit stops here tonight. This NSRA truck series is fantastic, keeping things clean and green. But I'm interested to see how broken up this field is going to be. You're seeing Jason Freeman right here, last week's race winner from Las Vegas Motor Speedway. He worked his way out onto the racetrack, just checking to see if he did not take a 4-tire stop. Interesting. I think this is just a 2-tire stop on the number 20. He used tire strategy to get the win 2 weeks ago. Might be doing so here tonight. Out front by himself, Fred Lester was able to make it onto pit road. There's the number 48. So after leading a couple of laps, making it to lap number 67, the 48 will let his crew go to work. But Andre, I'm not sure how this is going to work out for Jason Freeman, but he is all by his lonesome. That could be to his detriment here, as Scott Crump, Tristan Maher back behind him. Those 2 trucks are formed up nose to tail. Then you got the Tesoro brothers who are lined up nose to tail. And then back behind him, here's the big pack. Here's the big gaggle of trucks led by David Buell. You see Nate Maurer coming out onto the racetrack, and I'm not sure about Nate Maurer. I think he might have had to make 2 pit stops in the 971. Not exactly sure why. But Nate Maurer, double pit stop for a reigning series champion Jason Schue. Pit road speeding violation. John Flamian did have that unsafe pit entry that we did see. So a couple of these drivers getting dinged on pit road under green flag. And you and I know, Andre, that can be very, very painful for those drivers.
Yeah, it definitely is heartbreaking for Maurer in the 971. Again, he kind of needed tonight to go a little bit better, as you know, the last few races have been pretty rough, and it just seems like the bad luck streak continues. Whatever the cause of his second pit stop, it has just led to him being the first car lap down. He's going to have to hope for a caution that may or may not come. It's not a fun situation to be in, but you mentioned that these cars behind the leader that were linked up were going to catch him. Didn't take long. Scott Crump in the number 8, he worked pretty well with Tristan Maher in the 17. Those 2 hitched up. They threw out the tow hitch. They drove all the way up to the leader, and now we've got a single file battle for the lead. And the Tesoro brothers as well, they joined the party. They were no slouches behind the number 17. So it is 5 cars until you get to that bigger pack, again led by David Buell. So seeing, I would say, very reminiscent racing compared to Daytona. We saw this sort of a breakaway where we had the lead pack and then the pack a little bit further back. I was expecting a little bit more separation. I'm not going to lie. I was expecting a lot more separation. We saw a lot of cars come down pit road by themselves. We saw a lot of cars have issues on pit road. Generally, when that happens, you don't see these massive packs like this forming up. But oh no! Oh my goodness, was that Leshinsky again? The number 9, he's trying to get it gathered up. He will get it gathered up. He's back on the racing surface, but he is going to be outside of drafting distance. And it looks like the 18 may have got a piece of that, possibly a little bit of damage for Jimbo Casterline. Take a look at the 3-wide TV replay. Try to decipher exactly what transpired here in the middle of this second pack. So we're going to keep our eyes fixated on this number 9 of Leshinsky. He's got Justin White in front of him, and it looks like he just got a little bit loose there, Peter, which, again, you know, that's not something you see at Daytona or Talladega, but you'll see a truck get loose every now and again right here.
Yeah, and of course he did get that damage that he got on that pit road entry. Just wonder if that may have affected him in some way, shape, or form. But one thing that I think is absolutely crazy right now is look at this graphic in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. That's just popping up right here. You see that just going towards turn number 1, there's the group that's led by the black number 8. That's Scott Crump, who has worked his way to the race lead. Just now headed onto the backstretch there at the top of the graphic. That's currently our top 5. Look how far back to the big gaggle of trucks, 6th place on back, David Buell, is. They are about a third of a lap behind our leaders right now. And you know, often you'd say, well, our leaders, maybe they don't have a big enough group. They got 5 trucks. That's a big enough group to actually start to leg it out on Scott or on David Buell. So it looks like Michael McCauley says, you know what? I want to lead this group. Let me see if we can get in line and start working together, because we're not gaining on the leaders. In fact, over the last couple of laps, I think it's gone from about 7 seconds now up to 10.7. That lead pack, led by Scott Crump, is absolutely booking it here relative to this pack here. So we'll see exactly what that difference is here. If I can bring up the other graphic that let me see if I can bring it up. Just between the lap time history between Scott Crump and David Buell, who somewhat leads this group. There you see it right there. Anywhere between over half a second, last 4 laps, every single lap. Jimbo Kesterline there getting a little bit out of shape on the inside. There's another 7.5 tenths. Scott Crump has that front pack absolutely moving. That's because they're all in a line. They're all working together up the front of the field. This group right here, racing side by side, they're just hurting themselves. Lap after lap after lap. They're not formed up. Look at all the spacing between these front few drivers of this pack. There's about sometimes upwards of half a truck length. But then we're going to jump back to the front of the field. Here's Scott Crump. Look, he's got Tristan Maher tucked up right beneath his rear spoiler. That's going to make this front pack just so much faster, so much more efficient aerodynamically than that second pack. So things not working out. And Andre, I hate to say it, but we could be looking at a 5-car race to the end. But we know, based off of math, I've done the numbers in my head, we expect to see these drivers back on pit road sometime around lap number 105 if we continue to stay green.
Yeah, they're going to be just towards the end of the race, which is really going to be interesting because given the fact that we've seen their fuel mileage goes anywhere from 40 to 45 laps, it's about half a fuel run, Peter. So these guys definitely have the option of taking just enough fuel to make it to the end, maybe just right side tires, perhaps no tires at all. We've seen tires aren't really playing too much into the outcome of this race, it would seem. But the problem with that is it is a risk to do so. If you take a splash and go, it's a risk because we could see a green-white checkered. And if you didn't take enough fuel to account for that, you got to come back down pit road, give all that track position back up. So it's kind of a guessing game. Do you give up a little bit more time on pit road, taking extra fuel now in case? Or do you just try to get as much as you need to finish the race, get out of pit road as quickly as possible, and win the race on that alone? Well, if we're going on trends, again, going back to Daytona, everything was pretty calm, just like this race has had very few cautions for cause, knock on wood, so far. And it was just in those last 10 to 15 laps, I would say, that things got extremely chaotic and extremely difficult for those drivers out there. We had a lot of cautions consecutively, cautions bred cautions, and we did have a green-white checkered. So, you know, that could happen again. Larry Mack's trends of the race, it could happen again, but you never know. We've also seen these guys go pretty much caution-free for cause, not just at regular racetracks, but also at super speedways. So right now, I think as far as strategy goes, bit of a toss-up.
Yeah, definitely a bit of a toss-up, and we'll just see how long these drivers can push it as we continue to focus on this second pack. They are definitely not catching the front pack. You can see the numbers on the left-hand side of your screen. Now almost 15 seconds up to the number 8 of Scott Crump, who continues to lead that front pack with Tristan Maher, Jason Freeman, Julian, and Dominic Tesoro. Interesting front pack, Andre. Let's kind of break down that front pack. You see Bill Edwards now try to go to the outside of the second group. But in that front pack, we got Scott Crump. Scott has been Rocket Man. 2 poles this season, make it 3 here tonight, actually. And it has swept the poles so far this year. But unfortunately for Scott, Jimbo getting a little bit loose there. Just saw that out of the corner of my eye. But, kind of not having the finishes that we kind of expected him to translate those poles into. Could have got the win last week at Vegas, but things did not go out his way with tire strategy. But then you got 2 teammates. Got Tristan Maher, Jason Freeman, 2 teammates right back behind him. That's going to work against Scott Crump. And then you got the Tesoro brothers. And we know the Tesoro brothers are going to work together. So that's going to work against Scott Crump. Is Scott Crump a sitting duck here with about 42 laps to go?
Yeah, he's probably definitely considering that. And he probably's got to feel like a bit of a lone wolf up there. And if worse comes to where and these guys do start fanning out and making moves trying to take that lead from him, yeah, there's really nobody that's going to work with him. If he's going to keep this lead, if he's going to win this race, he's pretty much got to do it on his own. So we'll have to see. We know that 8 car is fast. We know Scott is a capable driver. But sometimes you get enough drivers working against you. It doesn't really matter how capable you are. Jimbo a little bit loose in the corner, still losing it, and he saves it. Good job, Jim, keeping that thing pointed in the right direction. He's going to get back up on the track. That was one heck of a save. Tell you what, it is not easy to get these things corrected. These trucks, when they get sideways and the air stops flowing over the bed of the truck onto the spoiler, it is a scary feeling. We'll take a look at the 3-wide TV replay. Let's check out Jimbo wheeling this thing out of the corner. You can see he's a little bit loose there, comes back up. He's loose again, down onto the apron where it's bound to be even looser. Fishtailing a little bit there. But he gets her gathered up, and he may be able to stay in the draft of at least Philip Scott there. Have to wait and see. I don't know. He's actually quite a ways back now, so we will have to keep an eye on him, but he may be slipping back in the timing and scoring as he's out of the draft. But this lead pack has just navigated a couple lap cars here. Crump's still in the lead, trying to hold on to it. Tristan Maher, second place as they run. Again, teammate Freeman right behind him. So when the time does come, he's going to be able to make that move. But we'll have to see if these guys even cycle out together. Again, green flag pit stops coming up, and that could definitely affect the running order of this race. And now that the lapped cars have actually kind of integrated themselves into this lead pack, they may actually start pulling away even more from the second pack.
Yeah, right now from Scott Crump to Bill Edwards, who was able to get around David Buell to lead that second pack, we're looking at 18 seconds. That is absolutely huge between first and sixth. You don't often say that very often, Andre, that it's on the order of 18 seconds, especially at a oval like this that races much like a super speedway. But that is where we're at as we have clocked underneath 40 laps to go. The laps are clicking by in an absolute hurry here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway in the FatalConcepts.com 301. Big shout out to FatalConcepts.com for sponsoring tonight's race here in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series. And, they're a great place to check out for custom paint schemes here in iRacing.com. Of course, iRacing recently added a new late model, and that's definitely one to check out. And if you want a custom paint scheme, FatalConcepts.com. We got Dragon Tamer Studios in the chat saying 18 plus seconds at Atlanta is absurd. Well, that's where, like I said, we sit at, and we'll see whether or not that continues to hold true as the lap count continues to wind down. But hopefully you're having a good evening, Dragon Tamer Studios. Johnny Williams in the chat, rooting on Jason Freeman, sitting on in third. Johnny, hope you're doing well and everything is all moving smoothly on your end. You see Jason Schue in the number 3 machine there, kind of the old Kevin Harvick throwback at the back of this pack. He is now 2 laps down. Nate Maurer, who is the reigning series champion. We've highlighted his troubles. They continue here tonight. I was thinking he was going to be the lucky dog spot. That's not true. And in fact, the lucky dog spot is about to change hands again because look at this. Jimbo Casterline, after losing the draft, when he had that big save, Andre, he is going to drop to the high side here, let the leaders on through, and actually throwing up some smoke up there on the top side of the racetrack. But now Jimbo Casterline falls into the lucky dog spot 1 lap down in the 16th position. So we're down to just 15 trucks on the lead lap. If you're wondering just how far ahead the number 99 of Philip Scott is, he's the last truck in that second pack. If you're just kind of wondering, well, let's bring up the track map graphic again. There's still a full straightaway, Andre, separating the lead group and the big pack, if you will. But it's continuing to, well, I don't know if you want to look at it in large or shrink. It's, I don't know. They're over a half a lap ahead now. So is it shrinking now? I don't know.
Well, now you got me thinking about it. I would say definitely the gap between them is diminishing spatially, but the gap in terms of timing and scoring is definitely growing as they are continuing to just be a little bit faster by a tenth or two every single lap. And again, they are growing closer and closer to those pit stops, and I think they know that. That's why a lot of these guys up front aren't really too anxious to make any moves. Tristan Maher, I think, he could make that move at any given time. He's got a teammate behind him. If he stepped out, he knows that 20 would go with him. But he hasn't done it yet. He knows that there's really no point in rushing the matter. He's got to come down pit road again, and you want to be on the bottom of the track to do so anyways. Can't really do that if you're up there on the high line battling for the lead. So it's going to remain, I would say, pretty calm for the next few laps. But I think after this next pit sequence, once it all cycles through, that's when it's going to get absolutely crazy. These guys are going to have no holds barred. They're not holding back any punches. They're going to be trying to take that lead for themselves for sure, because at that point, there's nothing stopping them. No more pit stops to worry about, no more stages, just a checkered flag in the windshield to try to worry about. So it's going to be something, but right now, a lot of patience.
Here's a really interesting thought that I just had in my head, Andre. Sometimes I have interesting thoughts. But Scott Crump has basically led this group now for a majority of this run. Usually when you're the leader of the group, you burn the most amount of fuel. We've already highlighted that he's a little bit of a lone wolf in this front pack. If the 17 and the 20 are saving a little bit of fuel by drafting up behind him, they might be able to go a lap, maybe even 2 laps longer, and the Tesoros are in the same boat. We've highlighted how important the draft is here, but is Scott Crump, by leading all these laps, actually putting himself in a hole?
Well, he definitely could be, because his fuel mileage is going to suffer, which means he's going to have to take more fuel to get to the end, which could add even just a couple tenths to his pit stop. And that right there could be all the difference. Somebody could cycle out in front of him, and from there, it's going to be really hard if he loses this lead for him to take it back, because he doesn't really have anybody to help him. Again, he's facing off against a group of teammates, 2 teammates behind him, and then 2 more teammates for a different team behind them. And then he's just all by his lonesome. So if he loses that lead, nobody's really going to help him take it back. So he's got to make sure that pit stop is as quick as humanly possible, that he doesn't make any mistakes. But again, if he stays out front, he keeps leading these laps, he's going to need more fuel than these other drivers. He's just kind of pulling them along, helping them to conserve fuel, and by extension, giving them a quicker pit stop, which is going to be hugely detrimental as we approach lap 100. And it is really anybody's game in this lead pack, but I think this pit stop is going to be a huge, huge deciding factor in the outcome of this race.
I'm sure it will. That is the money stop for a reason. We do expect to see Scott Crump on pit road within the next 4 to 5 laps. So we will keep our eyes on that very, very closely. Let's quickly check in on the second group. Bill Edwards, who was one of the earlier stoppers under the first round of green flag pit stops, he's actually made his final pit stop of the night. That actually gave the lead of the second group back to David Buell. He's got his teammate right back behind him. That is Doug Neal, the hometown driver, looking for a good finish here tonight. And then back behind him, Adam Newton, Justin White, and Fred Lester rounding out our top 10 right now as we cross the line. 25 laps to go here, Andre, but still plenty of time for something to happen. And, you know, I talked about this at Daytona a couple of weeks ago. You know, we always think about being in the back of the pack as being the place to be, the safest place to be. Well, I've been in this pack right here, where people get so frustrated that they're still losing time to the leaders that they start getting crazy. They start bump drafting where they shouldn't be bump drafting. They start following a little bit closer. They start getting more and more pushy to try and make up any difference they might have. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we do see a caution that comes out of this group. Usually you lay back, and that's what some of this group was doing for sure. Some of them were laying back because they thought there was going to be a big accident. Well, now they're, in my opinion, going to be in the eye of the hurricane, trying to duke this thing out and potentially causing, or if there is a big accident, I think it's going to be here rather than up at the front of the field. Speaking of up at the front of the field, look at this. Looks like the 17 and the number 20 are looking to the outside. Is Scott Crump going to make the hard left turn onto pit road? He does. 23 laps to go. And the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast, Toyota Tundra is on pit road. He does have the number 3. Wow, Jason Schue coming down with him. And Andre, that could be big for Scott Crump if Jason Schue can have a good pit stop. If Scott Crump can have a good pit stop and they can lock together and draft with one another, that might save the fact that Scott Crump may come out of pit road by himself. We talked about that just a little bit. But now, how far can these 4 drivers, Jason Freeman and Tristan Maher, push it? They're going to go another lap. They got all this draft off of one another. This is really good for Freeman, Maher, and the Tesoros.
It definitely could be good for those guys. And you're right. I think that number 3 of Jason Schue pitting with the number 8 could be a bit of a saving grace if he can get up to him and draft with him. A few more cars down pit road. Justin White, Nate Maurer, a few others getting those cars serviced. Really the majority of that second pack getting their car serviced as the leaders continue to race it out. It looks like the 20 and the 17, as well as the Tesoro brothers, are going to come down pit road, but it looks like one of the Tesoro brothers getting in a little bit hot. That may be a speeding penalty. I believe that was Julian coming in just a little bit quick, locked it up. I cannot imagine that he got down to pit road speed, but we'll find out very shortly. I want to go back to your point, though, earlier when they were racing in that second pack, and you said guys get a little bit crazy. They start bump drafting when they shouldn't. And, counterpoint to that, Peter, was that Justin White, league admin, was in that pack. And I feel like racing around an admin in a league is kind of the equivalent of following a cop on the interstate. You'll never see somebody drive so carefully as when they're near a cop. But look at this on pit road.
Jason Freeman and Julian Tesoro both busted by the iRacing.com speeding police. Tickets handed out. Those tickets are 40-second stop and holds. You do the math. Lap time here at Atlanta Motor Speedway under 30 seconds, or around 30 seconds rather. Julian Tesoro, Jason Freeman, both are going to lose a lap with a pit road speeding violation. Meanwhile, out there on the racetrack, look at this. Scott Crump has just blown on past Tristan Maher, who separated himself from the 69 of Dominic Tesoro. Dominic took 4 tires under his green flag pit stop. Tristan Maher and Scott Crump did not. Now Maher is going to need a little bit of help. He seems like he's almost off the pace here, Andre. It looks like Crump has teamed up with Bill Edwards in the number 5 as this pit road cycle has not gone well for quite a few drivers. Just looking up and down the scoring pile on Garrett Gleason, looks like he had a long pit stop on pit road. Julian Tesoro, we highlighted his problems. Nate Maurer also speeding penalty. It goes from bad to worse for Nate Maurer in the 971. But this really has been a difficult round of pit stops for a lot of drivers. It is the money stop, a lot of pressure on these drivers, and And like we've highlighted a couple times here in the show, this is a difficult pit road to get onto. But at least for Maher, he's going to try and duke it out here with the number 8 of Scott Crump, as it looks like a 2-truck battle if we stay green flag to the end.
I would say the outlook on Crump's race has changed considerably. Again, before this pit sequence, he was squaring up against 2 teams of 2. He had both the Tesoro brothers, and then he had Freeman working with Maher. And he was the only driver, Crump was the only driver that didn't really have a teammate to work with him up here. And if anybody made a move, well, it was up to him to play defense. But those penalties split the teams up perfectly. One of the Tesoro brothers got a penalty. One of the 17's teammates got a penalty. And so now, no more 2 teams of 2. It's just every man for themselves out here. And it's going to be just about who's going to make the move, who's going to be bold, who's going to be aggressive. And that, I think, is going to help the number 8's chances considerably. But that is not to say that it handed him the race by any means. We've still got this lap car in front of him, the number 5 of Edwards, and he is leading this little lead pack here, trying to keep these guys at bay, trying to keep his lap on the lead lap so that he wouldn't have to take the Brookstone Animal Hospital Lucky Dog Award should a caution come out. But we got contact as the 17 goes beneath the double white line. You can't do that, Peter, so he's got to back out, make another run at it. But the question now is, did the 8 car force him down there?
That was mighty close. Of course, now Tristan Maher's actually picked up a teammate in Garrett Gleason. Gleason, one of those Total Nonstop Racing team drivers. In fact, guess what? I'm wearing my Total Nonstop Racing t-shirt here today. I'm not playing favorites. They did give me a free shirt because I used to broadcast their league. But right now, the 17 there, Tristan Maher and Garrett Gleason teaming up together, although Gleason is 2 laps down, and I know if I'm Scott Crumb, I'd be mighty upset if a truck 2 laps down helped to dictate the outcome of this race. But Philip Scott, also a Total Nonstop Racing League driver, he is going to probably help out Tristan Maher to try and get the W here. So things kind of working out somewhat against Scott Crump, maybe a little bit if they can get formed up on that high line. But of course, if you're Bill Edwards on the flip side, you're in 8th place right now. You're the last truck on the lead lap. You don't want to go 1 lap down. So you're going to want to try and stay out in front. You're not going to play favorites here at this point, Andre. You're going to try and stay on the lead lap because if a caution flag comes out, that would change the complexion of this race. And surely, if you're Bill Edwards, it would change the complexion of this race as we're down to just 12 more laps to go. Maher looking around the outside. He might think about trying to do a little bit of side drafting. I think if he can get there, I think he'll be fine, as it looks like Philip Scott has been let by the number 7 of Gleason. Gleason dropping back just a little bit. I think they'll stay in the draft here, as there's still plenty of laps for them to kind of accordion back together. But at least for right now, Tristan Maher trying to use that side draft off of the number 5 and the number 8 to his advantage to make that high line work, but nothing doing so far. If you're wondering about that second pack, well, this is the second pack as it sits now. David Buell is the one leading this pack. Dominic Tesoro in the number 69. He's out there on the racetrack. Jason Freeman with his speeding penalty has dropped well down the running order to 11th. Then you see the 971 and Nate Maurer down in 18th, 3 laps down. So the reigning series champion really struggling to start 2023. But big gap between Dominic Tesoro and Scott Crump as up at the front of the field, Andre, look at this.
Looks like Maher is going to try to get a run using the help of the 99. You know, the viewers at home might be wondering, why are these lap cars influencing the race for the lead so much? Why are they, kind of integrating into this and battling so hard? Well, let me tell you, this isn't Formula One. This isn't sports car racing. There is no blue and yellow flags. Every single one of these drivers has an obligation to themselves and to their team to get as many points as humanly possible, to get as good of a finish as they can possibly get. And that is the only obligation they have. They don't owe these leaders anything. They don't have to get out of the way if they don't want to. They don't have to roll over and let these guys go by. They have every single right in the world to run their race and make these leaders work for it. And if the leaders can't get around them, well, that's their problem. So they might just have to figure out how to use these lap cars, just as the 17 attempted to try to take the lead And that's why these lap cars are racing so hard, because they have every single right to, and there ain't nothing wrong with it. So it's definitely making it interesting, that's for sure. And the 17 has shown he's got the pace. He got out ahead of the number 8, but he couldn't quite get clear of Edwards in the 5, so that meant he couldn't complete the pass. He couldn't slide down into the bottom, which I think is what you're going to have to do. You can make the pass on the high line, but I don't think you can keep the lead up there. You've got to be able to get clear of both trucks, slot down to that double white line, and then you should be home free. But it's not just a matter of passing one car for the 17 as long as Edwards stays hooked up with this number 8. So it's definitely an interesting dynamic. There goes Philip Scott again. He's going to push Tristan Maher down the back straightaway into 3 and 4. A little bit of side draft action there, like you mentioned, Peter. You can definitely throw out the old parachute if you do it right, and you can drag your opponent right back to you. And it looks like that's exactly what he's going to do. It's going to be nose to nose across the line, but it was actually, I believe, Maher maybe at the line that time, just by a hair. But it doesn't look like he's going to get clear quite yet. Let's see, coming down the back straightaway. I don't know, that 17's got one heck of a run. The 99 not relenting off the rear bumper. The 99 dips down low, as does Maher. We got a new race leader with 6 to go.
Yeah, that is absolutely huge that the number 99 of Philip Scott was able to duck down in front of the number 5, because now he can play a little bit of defense for his teammate, the number 17 of Maher. But looks like his opportunity to play defense has gone away as Bill Edwards trying to get back on the lead lap the old-fashioned way in the number 5 machine there around the outside, getting a big push from the number 8 machinist Scott Crump as they head off towards turn number 3 and 4. Look at this. The 17 is the leader of the race. The number 5 trying to get back on the lead lap. The number 8 trying to get back to the lead. This is going to be a wild finish here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway as we have just 4 more laps to go, and Scott Crump gets a little bit of a fender out front in front of the number 17 there momentarily, although Maher fights back in turn number 1 and 2.
Everybody's scrambling to try to use this lap traffic to their advantage and draft with them if possible. Crump getting really good runs up top with Edwards, but it's just not quite enough. Again, it's not a matter of clearing one truck. They got to get around Philip Scott and Tristan Maher, and that's going to be a bit more of a tall order, especially when Tristan Maher and Philip Scott have a teammate right behind them. So it is 3 cars lined up on the bottom versus 2 on the top. It is not a given that they're going to be able to make this move. Still going to be side by side down the back straightaway. Edwards desperately clinging on to the lead lap any way he knows how with the help of the number 8. And it's a bit of a symbiotic relationship. The number 5 says, get me back on the lead lap and I'll get you back to the lead. But unfortunately for them, the run just not really coming to fruition like it did with 17. That 17, Maher knew how to work that high line. He did it really well, and he was building up these crazy runs that I'm just not seeing out of the number 8. So I don't know what the difference is. I don't know if maybe there's some damage on one of these trucks on the high line that's kind of holding him back. But it seems like the 17's holding strong on the bottom.
Well, guess who was behind the number 17? The number 99. We talked about Philip Scott early in the race, how he was the only driver who wanted to run the high line. He got a lot of practice using that high line. I think as much as we might say Maher knew what he was doing, he also had a really good pusher as the white flag in the air here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. That inside line now of Tristan Maher still holding tough halfway down the backstretch. Look, Scott Crump doing all he can. The 99 of Philip Scott almost pushing the number 17 off into turn number 3 and 4, but coming around out of the corner. Look at that. Maher gets himself clear, and it will be Tristan Maher going to victory lane. Scott Crump coming home in second rather, and Dominic Tesoro kind of all by his lonesome with a couple of lap trucks here. Dominic will round out our podium in third. This is the battle for fourth as we got one truck in the wall that I think might have been Steven Lashinsky there, but Adam Newton in the number 29 didn't really mention his name all night long. But a quiet night for Adam Newton. He's done this to us before, coming home with a solid fourth place finish. Hometown driver Doug Neal finishing in fifth. David Buell gonna come home in sixth. But what a crazy finish. A good result for Tristan Maher, leaving it late here at Atlanta.
And it was definitely a well-earned win. He timed that move perfectly. And once he had the lead, he was able to defend it without much trouble. It seemed like he was able to just hold that bottom lane until that checkered flag flew, and it is going to be the number 17 turning his season around. Again, got to remember how rough the first few races were for this number 17, coming oh so close at Daytona and then having a little bit of misfortune at Vegas. Now finally getting his way back to victory lane. So things starting to come together for that number 17. He's going to do a bit of a joint celebration with his teammate, Philip Scott, who, I tell you what, I think Tristan owes Philip a beer or two, because if it wasn't for him, I don't think that 17 would be in victory lane right now. I think it would be that number 8. So Philip Scott, teammate of this entry. I mean, a lap down and still doing everything he can to make sure, hey, if I can't win it, I'm going to make sure my teammate does. So you love to see it. I love a little bit of teamwork here and there, and that was a lot of fun.
Well, they do it every week, Andre, for us here in the booth. They make it easy to commentate. They really do, because they keep things interesting. They make it very interesting, and I very much love the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series here in the National Sim Racing Association. Well, Tristan Maher, I think he's going to go till that engine pops, and you see smoke continuing to billow out of those Goodyear tires, and you see that little black puff of smoke or gray puff of smoke. That was it. That's all the engine had. But let's see if we can dial up some of those post-race interviews for you folks at home. And Andre, why don't you take it away with tonight's third place finisher, the number 69 of Dominic Tesoro.
Mr. Tesoro, you got a copy? Got a copy, Dominic?
Yes, sir.
Well, Dominic, it was a great run for you and your brother both. You guys were dominating the race at one point, working together, pretty much without a hitch, and then seemed like the picture of the race really changed with that last pit stop. Julian got a pit road speeding penalty. You were kind of left without a partner there, and you just fell back from the leaders a little bit. You took 4 tires and ultimately settled into third on the podium. Tell me a little bit about your race.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a fun race. We had the pace pretty much, the entire duration, from the stage to the actual race itself. But yeah, with that little mishap at the end, I definitely feel like that costed the race for both of us. He was running real good. I was running real good. We were definitely working together. A few hairy, laps here and there, but that's, speedway racing.
Yeah, super speedway racing is definitely going to be a little bit crazy. And then this is a unique track. I mean, coming from Talladega, Daytona, this track's a lot more narrow. The corners are a lot tighter. What were some added challenges that you might have faced here that you didn't necessarily have at a track like Daytona?
Yeah, so aero push was a big thing. You definitely got to be careful when you're behind another truck. Hell, you got to be careful when you're alone, but when you're behind another truck, it really creates that aero push in the front, so it washes out quite a bit, forcing you to essentially turn, further more into the corner. Then that gets the rear, pretty loose. So there's many challenges. Pit road, that's a story in itself with how difficult it is to dial it in right. Other than that, it's a super fun track. It's a good mixture of super speedway racing and just circle track racing. I think a lot of people enjoy that track. We do as well. Definitely a fun place to go.
Absolutely, it was a fun race to watch. That's for certain. Now we're finishing up with the third race of the season. I feel like the season's starting to get in the flow of things. It's really starting to get underway, and everybody's kind of figuring everything out. How are you feeling about the season so far, and how do you feel about your momentum going forward?
Pretty good. I mean, the last race we were at costed us a lot of points. You had a lot of back markers running up front, man. I'm pretty sure all the quick guys ended up crashing or disconnecting early. So that was a big issue for us the last race. But other than that, man, Daytona was good. All stage racing has been excellent for us. This race, I would say, was pretty decent for us. Can't wait to get to the road course racing. That's really where we're gonna thrive. But I'm feeling pretty good. Like I said, hoping for just a top 3 anyway. But we'll see.
Definitely looking forward to the road courses myself. Those are always a great race to watch. But Dominic, before we let you off the hook, is there any shout outs you'd like to make?
Tesoro Motorsports, Tesoro Raceworks, you guys in the booth, Justin White, everybody who sponsors the league, and that's about it.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, Dominic. We'll catch you next week.
Yep.
All right. Dominic Tesoro, third place finisher out of the booth. And now I believe Peter has caught up with second place in the pole sitter for tonight, Scott Crump.
Well, he is for sure Rocket Man in qualifying, but just coming up a little bit short in the race, Scott. But it wasn't for the lack of trying. It was a valiant effort by the number 8 machine here tonight. Things didn't quite play out for you with the cards, but you're knocking on the door each and every week. I'm sure a lot of momentum going forward to the road course next week. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it was pretty long race. Pretty calm, actually. I didn't think it was going to be that calm. Thought it was going to be a lot of too wild racing. Everything singled out, and then that I think the restart after the stage caution, somebody missed a shift and blew an engine. That separated the field from everybody, and then the pit stops really separated a bunch of people.
Now let's talk about those pit stops because you were on point here tonight. Those pit stops were really, really good out of the number 8 crew. Definitely one of the more difficult pit lanes to get onto, especially with this pack racing. Did you spend some extra time practicing getting to pit road this week?
Yeah, I did a little bit in practice before I came in here because I knew how important it is. You can either gain a bunch of time or lose a bunch of time. You can spin it. You can get a speeding penalty. So pit stops are really important here, especially keeps you up front and stays out front. That last stop, I pretty much nailed it, and I just about got out of Tristan's draft, but he just was just there enough to hang on, get my draft or whatever, and I just tried pushing the lap car, and I was pushing, and we were pushing pretty good. We had the lower side, which is what we wanted. And then I think we were on the bottom. They were above us, and he moved up a little bit, and we were out of sync a little bit, and I had to check up so I wouldn't spin them. So and then they got the inside position. And I was back car, so it wasn't looking too good for me.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, things didn't quite pan out. But hey, I'll tell you what, you absolutely nailed the play-by-play of every single pit stop here tonight. Car spinning, car speeding. We got a little taste of that from a good majority of the field here tonight. But Scott, you were on point. But speaking of going on point, next week you're going to have to be on point, turning left and right as we move over to road courses. And I don't know how you feel about road courses. Some people love them, some people hate them. I myself, I'm a big road course fan, but the next race that we go to is going to be at the road course that is Road America. 35 laps, going to be a little bit of a long one, going to be a tricky one. What are your thoughts about going to Road America?
Road courses usually ain't my best. I'm not bad at them. It's just never tend to win in any of them. But usually I'm pretty somewhat strong. I'm just not as fast as the fastest guys normally.
Well, we'll see what that number 8 can do, trying to go 4 for 4 on polls next week. Scott, before we let you go, any shout-outs you'd like to give out?
Yeah, get a shout-out to Jimbo Castellan. He is my sponsor with Stay Tuned Sports Podcast. And get a shout-out to y'all, 3Y TV up in the booth. Shout-out to my grandfather out in Florida. And yeah, that's pretty it. Shout-out to Tristan for winning there. Pretty good race there right at the end. Pretty excited.
All right. Well, Scott, we'll see you again next week here on 3Y TV. Best of luck.
All right, thanks.
All right. Well, let's see what. Let's see. Let me just check on something real fast because mouses like to die. Andre, are you good to go for interviewing tonight's race winner?
Yep, good to go. My push to talk decided to die at the worst time, but Mr. Maher, you got a copy?
Got a copy, guys.
Well, Tristan, that was quite a fun race. It was really only a 2-car battle for the win, but you had a teammate that was a lap down helping you out, and Scott Crump also had a lap down car helping him. So it was quite the interesting dynamic that we got to watch play out at the end of the race. And you and Philip Scott, man, you guys made the high line work so well, and ultimately it got you to the top spot on the podium. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, this race was super interesting, and I think there was a really big difference in everybody's strategy. And I think that the trucks that finished on the lead lap were, they obviously like we had a strategy, which was at least for me and Freeman. Our strategy was to just take right sides every time, 2-tire pit stops, and whatever fuel we needed, and it was enough to give us a big enough gap to eventually just pull away from the rest of the field. And yeah, it was an interesting dynamic at the end there with me and Crump being the only ones really battling it out, but we both had lap down helpers. It's pretty interesting to watch and interesting to race in for sure.
Now, when you made the move for the lead, you used the high line, and Philip Scott was pretty dedicated to the high line all night long. I think he had a lot of experience up there, and that may have kind of aided him in getting you up to the lead. But after you got to the lead, Crump tried to do the same thing that you did. He tried to get up to the high line, tried to make that same maneuver, and it just didn't quite work out for him. He couldn't quite get the momentum that you had. What would you say really was the difference there? I mean, how were you so fast on the high line versus everybody else?
I honestly think that comes down to the pusher, and there might be some things that I don't know, like whether or not they actually did take 2 tires, or what kind of tires they were on, because I'm not actually sure. But Philip, man, I gotta hand this one to Philip. He played 90% of why I won this race, because he pushed me at the end there, and he got me up to the front, and he just did his job and as a teammate, and helped a teammate win. So yeah, I gotta definitely give Philip a big shout out here.
So this win is definitely a nice turning point to the season. The first few races, you've had a little bit of misfortune, a little bit of bad luck that seemed to be out of your hands, but now maybe the tides are changing as we head into, I believe, a road course next week. How are you feeling about going forward?
I like road courses. I'm ready. I think it's Road America next week. I like road courses. I think they're a blast. I think that I can finish pretty strongly there. I can tell you right now, the person who pushed me to the win tonight, Philip, he's going to be a hard one to beat for sure. He's going to be my main contender, I think, next week for sure.
Now, one of the new things in the league this season is the implementation of stages and, of course, stage points. How do you feel that has kind of affected the racing, especially early on in a race like this, versus the way it used to be?
It's interesting for sure. You saw the beginning of this race, how it kind of was. It wasn't super crazy in the beginning, and as soon as lap 19 came around, because the stage was at lap 20, everybody started racing real hard on the last lap for the stage, and everybody's trying to get points. Obviously, points are super important. You gotta get the points to make the playoffs, and we actually did have, I think, one of our only caution, or the only caution of the night, on the stage finish lap. So that tells you right there, what happens when you implement stage racing. It can make things really interesting, and it adds an interesting dilemma for everybody on the racetrack, because you can either play it safe and protect your truck, protect what you got for the end of the race, or try to score some points during the stage.
Risk versus reward for sure. Well, Tristan, before we let you off the hook, is there any shout outs or thank yous you'd like to make for the win?
Yeah. NSRA, this is a fantastic league. I love running in this league. Justin White does a great job. He's got a lot going on, so I really appreciate him putting in the time to run this league. And then we got you guys up in the booth, 3Y TV. I'm excited to go watch this one back. Listen to you professional commentators out there. And then we got the Eclipse Photography Ford F-150 painted by Chris Darling. Always got to thank him over there at MaxGrafix. Keeping me looking fresh. That's all I got.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, Tristan. Congratulations on the win.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
And that is the race winner out of the booth. So that should just about do it for our post-race interviews. Peter, that was, not very often you see a two-car battle for the win at the very end of a plate race or a super speedway race, and definitely not so often you see lap traffic play such a big role in it. But we do have our final race results. You know where your favorite driver finished the night out. Tristan Maher taking the win, of course. We just heard from him. Scott Crump, the pole sitter, so far the only driver to sit on the pole this year, finishes in second place. Dominic Tesoro, P3. Adam Newton, again, very quiet night, as Peter had mentioned, finishes inside the top 5 in his number 29 machine. Doug Neal rounds out the top 5 in the 77. Again, a very quiet night for Doug, but finishing pretty well at his home track. David Buell is going to be P6, and then followed by Philip Scott, Bill Edwards, Jason Freeman, and Justin White rounds out the top 10.
In the 11th position, Julian Tesoro, who got that pit road speeding penalty in that last round of pit stops. Definitely not the finish that he was hoping for, and his pace indicated that he was a lot faster than 11th. Michael McCauley comes home in 12th. Vincent Valvano in 13th. The last driver 1 lap down. Garrett Gleason, who was up at the front in the mix at the end with the leaders, he finishes 2 laps down. Stephen Lashinsky also finishing in 15th. He started off with a hot rod in that number 9, hoping to bounce back next week on the road course. Fred Lester, 16th. Jason Schue down in 17th. Nate Maurer finishing in 18th. Jimbo Casterline finishing 19th, 3 laps down. That's a tough break for Jimbo. I think Jimbo had to have an extra pit stop towards the end of the race. Not exactly sure why, showing that he pitted on lap number 123. No, maybe not. Maybe that was just him coming down after the end of the race. But I think he had a pit road speeding penalty of some sort late, which is a tough break for him. John Flamian finishing in 20th, the last driver to finish. He had multiple troubles getting onto pit road here as well. Just to round out your field, a couple of drivers who did not finish. Josh Smith in the number 13, Matt Cherry in the number 51. Those 2 drivers were involved in a scuffle just before the stage caution came out on lap number 20. Paul Bilson, who had the money shift, blew his motor with shifting. Tried to shift up in 4th, but accidentally shifted down into 2nd gear. Blew the motor. He finishes 23rd. Jeff Price finishing last place tonight after having some computer troubles. But Andre, another great race here in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series. A great finish to tonight's FatalConcepts.com 301, and I'm very much looking forward to what Road America has in store next week. We've had kind of almost 3 super speedways. Vegas a little bit less so than Daytona or Atlanta, but things are going to drastically change on the road course next week.
Yeah, definitely a change of pace. Like you said, very similar style of racing at all 3 tracks we've been to so far. Now we're going to take some high horsepowered bricks with wheels to a road course that they most certainly weren't built for. And that always puts on a great show to see what these guys can do. And it sounds like the drivers were just as excited as we were to go to Road America. So I'm looking forward to it. And if the fans are looking forward to it, well, you can find it right here on 3Wide TV next week.
Absolutely. Thanks to everyone who tuned in here tonight. Bob Giaquinto, Dragon Tamer Studios, Johnny Williams, Jeff Price, and the Windsors all getting a shout out in the chat here before we check out. But for myself, Peter Short, Andre Graham Bush, and everyone here in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series family, have a good night, stay safe, and we shall see ya!